Hey everybody, welcome back to the Freedom Men's Podcast. I'm Sterling here with Kyle.
What's up?
Yeah, it's been a good day already. We're excited about the topic today. It's about kind of really what things in our lives we avoid and what things we choose to tackle and why we may not want to tackle them and avoid them instead. But I'm looking forward to it. What's kind of the first thought that you were thinking with this?
Yeah, as we kind of started formulating the plan for 2023, we heard from guys and they all wrote on the board. These are not our topics, Sterling, right? These are the guys of Freedom that wrote down topics. I think we wrote down 12, 14 that would take us through the year. And one of those things was doing hard things, about guys tackling issues in life head on, not procrastinating, not being lazy, but really doing hard stuff in our life. When you think doing hard things, my mind immediately goes to hiking a mountain, riding my bicycle long distance, running, doing these type things in life. But we know that doing hard things is in life way more than just physical stuff.
Way more.
Some of the hardest stuff that we face in life is right here between our ears.
Yeah, right. It's our eardrums. No, I'm just kidding. It's it's the controlling our emotions, our reactions. It's honoring people when they don't deserve our honor, but that's what the Lord has called us to. But kind of dying to ourselves daily. And I had an interesting thought that we didn't talk about before, but within that 1 Corinthians 13 passage that talks about love and other places in 1 Corinthians that talk about husbands honor and submit to your wives and wives submit to your husbands. I never had the thought before, but husbands, they're supposed to love their wives like Christ loved the church.
Yes.
And I never made the connection before, but that to me means men are the first ones that have to die to themselves.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
We have to die to the things that we naturally want to do so that we can put other people first. And I think that kind of ties in with this doing difficult things means we have to be the first ones in our marriages, in our relationships with friends, with our coworkers, with our bosses, with our kids. We have to be the first one to die, to lay down our own kind of desires, our own expectations of how things should play out. And so it's just a thought. It's not easy. A lot of parts.
It's not easy. And what we've got to decide is that we will die, just as Christ died for the church. But we've got to tackle task as the head of our household that a lot of times you talk about hard things right now, and this is a men's podcast, right? I'm having to renew my auto insurance, and you know what I want to do? I know we've talked about this: avoid versus tackle. I want to avoid calling all of these insurance agencies to try to renew my auto insurance, but I also don't want my auto insurance to go up 50%. But that's hard. I've got to go back and forth with all these people. I avoid. But instead of avoiding, we got to tackle it. So I think that's the mindset that we're going to have going into this.
When it comes to these hard things around us, you wrote down a lot of great things. We had some great discussions, and I'm excited to kind of get into this. What are some of the places in our lives that you felt like we have hard things that we don't take care of sometimes?
Yeah, I feel like, there are three areas that are kind of dominant in our lives that we could look at today and some situations there. One would be family, two would be church, and three would be work. And there are situations that happen in all of those that we as men, we like to avoid. We'd rather go out into the garage and beat the hammer on a piece of wood than go in and deal with our cranky teenagers, right? We'd rather shut the door in our office and hide than deal with the division that's between us and a coworker down the hall.
That's good.
So we avoid these things. And that's what we're talking about today. This is hard stuff.
It's hard.
This is why we avoid these situations and we avoid people. You see someone walking that you have a conflict, you go the other way. You go down the other hallway. You walk through the other door because of the conflict that's there. But if we're going to be great men and women of God, then we have to stand up and do what Jesus called us to do. I go to more funerals now than I ever have in my entire life. Like I joke all the time. 3 years ago, I was doing school assemblies for thousands of kids, and now I attend funerals with 100 people, 100 old people, right? And so for me, it's just this awareness of time's short. I'm not promised today. I'm not even promised tomorrow.
That's good.
And so I don't want to leave unfinished business on the table. So if I got to call my dad, I got to call my dad. If I got to call my mom, I got to call my mom. If I got to call a cousin or an aunt or an uncle that things aren't right between me and them, listen, that to me is more important than watching another reality sitcom or reality show or a sitcom. That to me is more important than anything else I can do to entertain myself, because when we really break down our day, we entertain ourselves way too much.
We use it as an avoidance tool.
Yes.
Yeah.
So instead of having that tough conversation with my dad, I'm going to watch a television program and completely ignore the situation.
Yeah. And just run away instead of tackling it and attacking the situation, we avoid it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think time's short. And for me, with our relationships, with the strange relationships with moms or dads or siblings, I think it's about taking the time to be intentional, to fall on your sword even, and humble yourself. And I think that's where a lot of it comes in. I think we get pride in our lives. So we say, well, they should call me.
Yeah.
Or they did that, so they need to respond to me.
Yeah.
But if we walk through every door with humility, then I think those relationships would be repaired faster than we could even consider. Well, let's jump into the second realm, is the church. And I want to kind of frame it with all one. And we could go different directions here. But unmet expectations.
Yeah.
Unmet expectations inside the church. That may be from a pastor. That could be from a small group leader.
Yeah.
That could be from friends just in the church. It could be from the ushers on what they're supposed to do with their job. They didn't ush me correctly, right?
Ush me.
Whatever it is.
What does that mean?
There are so many unmet expectations in the church that people get butthurt over. They get upset over. How do we tackle that hard thing?
Yeah. Well, for starters, a lot of times it's for good reason that you're upset.
Yeah.
You know, you being placed last on someone's priority list is never fun. It's never a good feeling. Whether it's justified or not, it hurts. And you're one that actually has taught me this in Hebrews 13 that talks about pay attention to the leaders of the faith in your life. Learn from their faith, but pay attention to the outcome of their life and see if you want your life to look like theirs.
Yep.
And so you've taught me that. With some of the leaders that you've worked with, have you seen them ever really done a good job of being empathetic and understanding people when they're hurting? And then have you seen a leader just do the opposite, where they just rip someone to shreds for being upset?
I guess for me, I've learned from every pastor that I've worked for. I've worked for 3 pastors, and I think the best way is to tackle it head on. My personality is more aggressive than passive aggressive. And so if I know someone in our church, whether it's a staff member or a small group leader or a volunteer, if they have hurt of unmet expectations, I want to know about it. I want to get the email. I'm not afraid of your email. I'm not afraid of the conversation over in the coffee shop to say, hey, this happened. Can you help me understand this? And so I love being that, and our pastoral staff helping people to understand the whole side of the story. Where they're mad about this one thing, but did you see these other 15 things that are going on that influence that? Let's jump into the third. This third area is workplace, and this is a big one. Because this is the easiest place to avoid. We talk about disagreements with coworkers, boss that demands with no relationship. Maybe you just went through a job transfer, or your company just got bought out, or maybe even you were just terminated. Like, these are all hard things within your career, or even you're just in a place and you've just lost your passion and you're just robotically going through your responsibilities. I mean, these are all things that every one of these guys listening to this podcast face every single day. How do we, Sterling, tackle these things instead of avoid them?
Proverbs 19:11 is one scripture that really guides me, which is to understand someone yields glory. It gives you glory to understand their wrongdoings, which is, the offense that I was talking about. It's to one's glory to overlook an offense. And, it's huge.
And I've probably said this before in one of our podcasts, but there's just some people in life that we just don't like. There's people you don't like, I don't like. Some of that is stereotypical driven. Some of it's just getting to know someone and first impressions are bad. Got off to a bad start. You're like, man, I just don't like that person. And this is what I found. Every one of those people that I feel like I don't like, once I sit down with them, have lunch or a conversation or a meeting, I learn who they are. I become more empathetic towards them, and the story changes.
That's good.
Like, all of a sudden, this is my best friend. So instead of avoiding that, and that's what we're talking about, doing hard things, instead of avoiding that person because I don't like them, they're weird, they talk funny, they don't do this right, or they're, you ready for this? Not just like me.
Right.
Because that's the biggest thing in culture. We collect people around us that are just like us.
That's right.
And we avoid the people that are the weirdos.
Yeah.
Well, everyone's got weirdos in their lives.
Yeah.
Right?
And if you don't, you're the weirdo. No, I'm just kidding.
You're the weirdo. So for me, I have to do a hard thing and sit down and have a meeting with them. Take them to lunch, get to know them. And then once that's there, everything changes.
I think that's beautiful. I agree. It's up to us to not only step in and approach them, see the pain that they have or see the life that they've lived, but to listen and understand them, to get close to them, and then to do something about it if we can, to take them out to coffee, to get to know them, to listen a little longer than you have time for. And there's always a cost, but I would rather invest in the relationships than the to-do lists any day, even though a lot of those to-do lists are based in relationships. You still need to invest in the people that are right there present with you.
Yeah,
And that's hard.
I love to-do lists versus relationships, because think back to the jobs you've had prior to freedom. Do you remember every little to-do list you had?
No.
Do you remember all the tasks, the weekly activities? All of those things are quickly forgotten, but what do you remember? The relationships.
Yeah.
The relationships we had with your pastor, with the youth pastor, with the worship leader, with your small group pastors, all of those things.
Yeah.
You remember that, not the to-do list. How many signs did we make? How many bulletins did we print? What color carpet we had? You forget that.
Yeah.
You remember the relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. No question that to do the difficult things means to prioritize the relationships.
Yes.
To place high value on them, whether that's family, church, or work, but not to see them as disposable, not to see them as something that is meaningless. In fact, if you're a Christ follower, that is everything.
Yep.
And Paul said that himself. There is nothing that matters except showing your faith expressed through love.
Yeah.
Your faith and the end of our lives will come, like you just said a few minutes ago about we have a short life here. We need to put things in perspective. Nothing is more important than showing that faith that we have in the Lord expressed through our love,
through your love
and deeds for others.
Well, and I think this is why businesses and churches, we do this, spend millions of dollars every year on team collaboration, on team bonding, on team shared activities.
Yeah.
This is why you go to game shows and ropes courses, and you do escape rooms, and you may go take a picnic at the park or go watch a movie together. Like, all of these things help break down those disagreements, those divisions that can happen within an organization, and promote relationships and show that true love for each other. Because when you love somebody, when there's a mutual trust, you'll fight any battle together.
Yeah, it's totally different. You can trust that they have your back, you've got their back, and even when everything goes south, you're still gonna fight for each other, not against each other.
And that's how teams work. But it all comes back. What's the hard thing in this, as we're talking about this? The hard thing is simply getting out of your comfort zone and going and having a conversation.
Do you think a lot of it's ego-driven?
Yes.
That avoiding those hard things, it's usually because it's something that costs your ego or your pride?
Ego, pride, all of that. But we got to have those hard conversations to get to know people. And I think the Lord wants us to do hard things for a couple of reasons, Sterling. Number one, I think he wants to mold and shape our character. And when we do hard things, when we push beyond our boundaries, when we go that extra mile that we see in Scripture, then we develop a character that's more like Jesus. Mm-hmm. So he wants to mold us. If life was always easy and it was always cupcakes and ice cream, then we wouldn't develop strong, chiseled bodies, right? So we've got to do hard things for that. I also think, number two, he wants to deepen our relationship with him. Yeah. And so through these hard times, we pull in closer. We snuggle up to him a little bit more so that we can be more like him. So all these hard things are developing our character, which goes to a big religious word called sanctification. We know that we're justified, our sins are forgiven, we are saved, but we start this process called sanctification, becoming more like him, shaking off the dust and the rust so that we can be more glorified like him. And then finally, I think ultimately he wants to do the impossible through us. Yeah. He wants us to tackle hard things because he knows that he's a God of the impossible. Mm-hmm. And if he is, he wants us to be as well. Yeah. And how cool is it that we can be called sons and daughters of God and do the same things that he does? Yeah, that's good. So he molds our character, we get closer to him, and then ultimately we start doing impossible things. Yeah. And that doesn't make us look good. Right, there you go. And if it does, then we've got wrong priorities. Right. And our kingdom will crumble fast. Oh, yeah. But when it's upon him, the glory of the impossible things that we've done, give him all the glory and the praise. And he didn't create us just so that he could have a great loving relationship with us individually, although he does want that. Yep. He created us ultimately to glorify him, which sounds weird, and it's a weird thing you got to wrestle with in your head. But my ultimate goal in life is not to have a loving relationship with my Father. My ultimate goal is to glorify a jealous God. Yes. One who wants that glory, that wants
other people to glorify him as well and say, look at everything that my Father in heaven has done for me. So you nailed it, man. That's awesome. I completely agree.
Yeah,
he wants to do
good.
the impossible to glorify him.
Yeah, why don't you go and close this out?
Okay. Well, thank you guys, everyone, for being here and being a part of the Freedom Men's podcast and just being a part of Freedom Church. We always really enjoy catching up with you guys and seeing you.
Yeah, and be ready for all the fun stuff we're going to have this summer. We're going to Top Golf. We're going to go to the Ranger game. Lots of fun activities to connect with other guys and become stronger men at Freedom Church.
Yes. So it's going to be a great summer. And thank you so much for being a part. We'll see you next time.